and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met China's Xi Jinping for the first time in 6 years and said Pyongyang will continue to support China's interests. Kim has now left Beijing after wrapping up his 5-day trip, his longest visit to China on record. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to lower Japanese auto tariffs to 15%, increasing the likelihood of a gap in tariffs with South Korea, which still imposes 25%. After at least 16 people were killed in a funicular crash in Lisbon, Portuguese authorities confirmed that they have identified the bodies of 8 victims: 5 Portuguese, 2 South Koreans, and 1 Swiss national. We begin in Beijing, where North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Chinese President Xi Jinping held talks last night, reaffirming friendship and discussing a variety of issues. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Chinese President Xi Jinping's meeting signaled the restoration of close ties that had grown distant due to the recent North Korea-Russia rapprochement. The two met at the Great Hall of the People on Thursday, marking the first such meeting since 2019, with Kim visiting China in January of that year, while Xi visited Pyongyang in June. During the meeting, the two leaders shared the pleasure of seeing each other yet again and agreed to work together to safeguard their common interests, as part of what was described as a community of shared destiny.
In the face of a turbulent international landscape, China stands ready to strengthen strategic communication, enhance exchanges and cooperation, and deepen exchanges of experience in governance with the DPRK, so as to effectively advance our respective socialist cause and jointly promote regional peace, stability, development, and prosperity.
The past 6 years have seen earth-shaking changes and development in China, which impressed me greatly. What touched me even more is the unwavering and profound friendship between our two peoples. Despite the ever-changing world, this friendship will never change.
While touting the development Beijing achieved, Kim stressed the regime's readiness to deepen economic and trade cooperation to achieve greater results. When it comes to the tension on the Korean peninsula, Kim did mention how he appreciated China's, quote, fair stance regarding the issues, to which Xi responded that China will continue to strengthen coordination with the North to safeguard peace and stability in the region. However, the joint statement released by China after the meeting did not include any mention of the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Kim arrived at Beijing Station at 9:50 p.m., departing on his special train 50 minutes later. He is expected to arrive in Pyongyang on Friday afternoon if he heads straight back. His 5th visit to China was his longest one on record, lasting 4 days and 5 nights. His stay in Beijing was also his longest at around 54 hours. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And at China's Victory Day parade this week, active diplomacy between North Korea, Russia, and China sent a strong signal to the world. Our Oh Soo-young explains what it means for peace and denuclearization of the Korean peninsula.
A new phase of bloc politics could complicate the equation for peace on the Korean peninsula. That's according to analysts in Seoul, after Kim Jong-un joined Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin at China's Victory Day celebration in Beijing. On Wednesday, the leaders of North Korea, China and Russia put on a united front throughout China's major military parade, hardening the fault lines against South Korea's strengthened trilateral cooperation with the United States and Japan.
China and Russia have openly declared that they intend to advance a so-called multipolar international order, which will all revolve around the global south, BRICS, and Eurasian states. Their gathering reflected that push. Second, it signaled a countermessage to the U.S. and the West, considering the recent South Korea-U.S. summit and their solidarity with Japan, reinforcing bloc confrontation in the region.
For Kim Jong-un, it also underscored his push for recognition of North Korea as a nuclear power. While South Korea and the United States say they remain committed to reviving dialogue with Pyongyang, both allies maintain their push for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. But for now, Pyongyang has little incentive to talk, as it benefits from Russia's war in Ukraine with troop deployments and arms supplies exchanged for economic and diplomatic returns. At the same time, the potential end of the Ukraine war could mean Kim must keep his options open, shoring up ties with China and pressing for deeper economic cooperation.
From Kim's perspective, it would be the North Korean-style division of labor, the economy from China, security from Russia, reaping benefits from both. Still, if talks to end the Ukraine war do take place and move forward, U.S.-North Korea dialogue could open up. In that dialogue, North Korea would seek to leverage China's backing to pressure the U.S. This reflects a calculated diplomatic strategy.
For South Korea and the US, China adds another layer of complexity.
China's decision to invite Kim underscores its role as a key player in Korean Peninsula and regional affairs, displaying Beijing's firm influence on the North. The message is that Seoul and Washington must maintain amicable ties with China if they want to improve relations with the North.
It's a leverage Xi Jinping's clearly flaunted as he elevated Kim Jong-un's treatment with special protocol in Tiananmen Square. The diplomatic calendar further raises the stakes. South Korea will host the APEC leaders meeting this October and has hoped to see the leaders of the US, China and even North Korea show up. Attending the Victory Day parade instead of President Lee Jae-myung, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik has invited Xi Jinping to APEC once again. It remains unclear whether the Chinese leader will accept.
China initially had high hopes at the start of the Lee administration, but despite stressing pragmatic, national interest-based diplomacy, Lee prioritized a summit with Japan and reaffirmed its alliance with Washington. That likely displeased Beijing.
Looking forward, Seoul says it will continue to strengthen its alliance with the United States while pursuing a stronger relationship with China in a way that mutually benefits their citizens, while calling on Beijing to play a more constructive role in Korea Peninsula affairs. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
So as we just heard, North Korea's Kim Jong-un met China's Xi Jinping in Beijing for the first time in 6 years. And their rare one-on-one meeting was largely focused on reaffirming friendship. Now, as for South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung will be traveling to New York later this month, where he could meet his American counterpart, Donald Trump, for the second time in around a month. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Kim Dong-soo, professor at the Division of International and Area Studies at Pugyong National University. Professor Kim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sat down for talk with China's Xi Jinping last night, and Russia's Putin in Beijing also. What's your assessment of North Korea moving closer to Beijing and Moscow?
I think the increasing closeness between North Korea, Beijing, and Moscow suggests a strategic realignment that could influence regional and global dynamics. By strengthening ties with China and Russia, North Korea may be seeking to diversify its diplomatic and economic partnership and enhance its security through support from major powers. This shift could serve as a response to the ongoing international sanctions and diplomatic pressures, offering North Korea a broader set of alliances to potentially negotiate from a position of greater strength. Although the exact implication depends on how these relations develop, what is certain is that Kim's appearance in Beijing was a kind of bold move in a broader game of global power recalibration.
Right, and it was a dramatic image we saw in Beijing, Kim, Xi, and Putin appearing together in public for the first time. Will the United States try to further strengthen three-way ties with South Korea and Japan in response to that?
Yeah, I think it is very likely that the United States will seek to reinforce its alliance with South Korea and Japan in response to the growing trilateral engagement among North Korea, China, and Russia. The United States has a long-standing strategic interest in maintaining regional stability and deterring potential threats from North Korea and other regional actors. So strengthening trilateral cooperation with South Korea and Japan could involve kind of joint military exercise, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic efforts to present a united front. This approach aims to counterbalance the influence of North Korea, China, and Russia, and to reassure regional allies of U.S. Commitment to their security and stability in the Asia-Pacific region.
Right. And as for South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung will be attending the UN General Assembly later this month and chair a meeting there. And he will be the first South Korean president to preside over a UN Security Council meeting, as South Korea assumes the rotating presidency this month, right? So what makes this so significant?
Yes, President Lee Jae-myung presiding over a UN Security Council meeting as South Korea's rotating president is highly significant. It is the first time a South Korean leader has had such a role, highlighting South Korea's increasing international status and diplomatic influence on global issues. The leadership position offers South Korea a platform to shape discussions on international security, peacekeeping, and global challenges such as nuclear proliferation and climate change. It also underscores South Korea's commitment to multilateral diplomacy and its desire to contribute actively to global governance, especially amid regional tensions and North Korea's ongoing threat. Overall, it enhances South Korea's diplomatic standing and provides an opportunity to advocate for issues important to the country and to the broader international community.
I see. And will President Lee's visit to New York provide an opportunity for him to meet President Donald Trump again? And could there also be a trilateral summit that includes Japan?
Given the diplomatic importance of UN General Assembly, there is a reasonable possibility that President Lee could arrange another meeting, formal or informal, with US President Donald Trump while both are in New York. However, no official confirmation of such a meeting has been announced yet. Also, President Lee has previously emphasized the importance of trilateral cooperation with the US and Japan, and has expressed openness to such a meeting on the sidelines of international forums such as G7. But there's currently no report or confirmation that a trilateral summit in New York is arranged. My personal perspective is that the trilateral summit is unlikely at this point because it is much more complicated than arranging bilateral summits.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that plays out in New York. All right, Professor Kim, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday under which tariffs on imported Japanese automobiles and parts will be lowered from the current 27.5% to 15%. The new tariff rate will apply retroactively to Japanese auto products that arrived in the U.S. on or after 12:01 a.m. on August 7th, Washington time. The order stipulates that for a Japanese product with an existing duty of less than 15%, the total sum, including the reciprocal tariff, will be 15%. And for a product with an existing levy of at least 15%, the reciprocal tariff will be 0%. The U.S. has completed administrative procedures with Japan first, and it is scheduled to take effect as early as next week, increasing the likelihood of a gap in automobile tariffs with South Korea, which still imposes 25%. Meanwhile, over in Europe, the tragic crash of the historic Gloria funicular in Lisbon has left 16 victims dead, of which 2 have been identified as South Korean nationals. A mass was held at the site of the accident Thursday night, and an investigation has been launched by the local authorities, with all of Lisbon's funiculars shut down for technical inspections. Our Ian-jin has the details.
In the tragic crash of the historic Gloria funicular, 16 people were killed and more than 20 others injured. On Wednesday around 6:15 p.m. local time, Lisbon's 140-year-old funicular train, which is popular with tourists, derailed and crashed into a building. Portuguese President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa and Prime Minister Luís Montenegro visited the site of the funicular accident on Thursday evening for a mass in honor of the 16 victims of the crash. Prime Minister Montenegro called the crash one of the biggest human tragedies in the country's recent history, and President Rebelo de Sousa told journalists that it was a time to mourn the deceased and to console their family members.
Today is a national day of mourning. It's mourning for Lisbon, but also for Portugal. In this hour of mourning, we are waiting for a time when, first and foremost, we must mourn the dead, respect the dead. Believers pray for the dead. Non-believers think of the dead.
The yellow funicular that carried many tourists up and down a steep hillside in Lisbon was left overturned on the cobblestone street. Of the 16 victims, the coroner has so far identified the bodies of 5 Portuguese, 2 South Koreans, and 1 Swiss national.
5 Portuguese citizens have been fully identified through scientific methods. 2 South Korean citizens. We have had close collaboration with the South Korean embassy from the outset, and 1 identified Swiss victim identified through Interpol.
Among those not yet officially identified may be 2 Canadians, 1 Ukrainian, and 1 German. It is not known how many passengers were on board when the crash happened, and an investigation has now been launched by Lisbon prosecutors, police, and the Transport Accident Investigation Department. Carish, the company that operates Lisbon's buses, trams, and funiculars, said all of its funiculars and its vertical lifts in the capital had been shut down for technical inspections, which would take place in the coming days. 이은진, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Starting in Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron said 26 nations pledged to deploy a reassurance force to Ukraine immediately after a ceasefire agreement is reached. According to Macron, following the Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris on Thursday, 26 countries have committed to providing security guarantees for Ukraine. These forces are intended to deter future Russian aggression, not engage in combat, and will be deployed the day after a ceasefire or peace deal takes effect. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, alongside U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, participated in the summit. While continued American support was discussed, the U.S. has not yet pledged ground troops. Macron also said U.S. support for Ukraine's security guarantees will be finalized in the coming days following a call with President Donald Trump. Though some EU countries, including Italy, have ruled out sending troops, others, such as Germany, are weighing participation and may support Ukraine through training and equipment. The United States has promised to support Ecuador's fight against drug cartels, announcing nearly $20 million in new funding. The announcement was made during Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit to Quito, Ecuador on Thursday, where he unveiled $13.5 million in security assistance for general anti-cartel operations and an additional $6 million to equip the Ecuadorian Navy with surveillance drones. Rubio also designated Ecuador's most notorious gangs, Los Lobos and Los Choneros, as foreign terrorist organizations, referring to them as vicious animals. The designation grants the U.S. broader authority to freeze assets, target operations, and enhance intelligence sharing capabilities. Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa expressed support for tighter cooperation with the U.S., including the possibility of reinstating a U.S. military base in the country. This decision comes in response to a surge in violence and drug trafficking driven by cartels in Ecuador. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a new Ebola outbreak has been confirmed in central Kasai province, where 15 people have died and 28 suspected cases have emerged, according to the country's health ministry on Thursday. The latest case involved a 34-year-old pregnant woman admitted to the hospital in August, who subsequently showed symptoms of the illness. This marks the country's 16th Ebola outbreak since the disease was first identified in 1976. Officials said the Zaire strain, which is rare but highly fatal, was identified. The World Health Organization said it was acting with determination to halt the spread of the virus and protect communities rapidly. Italian fashion icon Giorgio Armani passed away at the age of 91 on Thursday, with reports saying he died peacefully at his home in Milan following a long illness. Dubbed the King of the Blazer, he was known for his modern Italian style, characterized by elegance and simplicity, having pioneered the concept of soft power dressing, which features more fluid, longer-cut suit jackets and loosely pleated trousers. Tributes poured in from across the fashion world and beyond, including Donatella Versace, who called him a giant, and others lauded his legacy. Armani remained actively involved in his brand and design work until his final days. An area for the public to express condolences will be set up over the weekend in Milan.
After comfortable morning temperatures, late summer heat makes a comeback in the central parts of Korea today. But intense late summer heat continues in the southern regions, with heat wave advisories remaining in place. And this afternoon, Daegu, Gwangju, Busan will be getting up to 32 degrees Celsius, with a chance of some passing rain in southern regions, which will lead to muggy conditions. Meanwhile, Seoul tops out at 33 degrees under sunny skies this afternoon. But about that passing rain, the amount could be anywhere from 5 to 60 millimeters, with a chance of heavy downpours through the evening. Meanwhile, we're looking at some heavy rain this weekend. Central regions and Jeollado provinces could get up to 80 millimeters of heavy rain. Rain will start from the west, spreading nationwide, and it could pound down 50 millimeters per hour at times. Rain will continue in southern regions through early next week, but morning temperatures will get much cooler.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.